I'm Helena. People call me SPID. I don't do much public speaking, but I do tell a lot of stories. All stories are retellings. This is the story I'd like to share. On that frosty winter day more than 3 years ago, the silence was deafening. I stared at the ornate crest and shivered. RBKC, Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea. High ceilings make a place cold. My t-shirt was flimsy and damp. Its lettering had faded. SPID, social, progressive, interconnected, diverse. I had come straight from mopping leaks at Kensal House, the neglected historic estate that's been my theatre company's home for almost 2 decades. Tonight would be a very different show. As locals piled in, I checked my phone. Tweet.
You're disgusting.
The voice in my head. They're out to get me.
We're coming for you.
I'm all alone.
Traitor.
It's all my fault.
Loser.
I can't win. The heavy door slammed shut. The planning committee took their seats.
How are you feeling, SPID?
The bile in my belly, the weight on my shoulders, the wet behind my eyes. As the chair asked me to speak for my charity, I felt fear. SPID is a youth charity that uses theatre, film and radio to call for investment in social housing. SPID mixes verbatim testimonies with scripted dialogue to celebrate and champion a state's history. Historic England's Buildings at Risk Register led us to Kensal House, a Grade 2 star listed estate in Ladbroke Grove. In 2005, we left venues like the ICA and Riverside Studios for a home of our own. We were thrilled when the Residents Association invited us to stay. We swapped traditional stages for graffiti parks and youth clubs, casting local kids alongside professionals. Neighbouring estates welcomed the interactive DIY shows we premiered at Kensal. After more than a decade of unpaid blood and sweat, we finally raised 2.4 million to restore our stage and hall, create a modest workshop space, and scale up our free drama and heritage programme. So why were so many residents giving me ephors in this fancy town hall? The answer is a very different building. Grenfell. When the tower burned, everyone who lived or worked in North Kensington was devastated, but not surprised. Writing The Burning Tower felt urgent. My play grew from Living History, our youth project interviewing estate residents.
It wasn't the fridge or the cladding that killed my friends. It was being ignored.
Journalists called The Burning Tower
a love letter
to estates.
A passionate defense of social housing.
But the publicity triggered local mistrust. Press had shunned these estates for decades. What right had I to a tragedy that was theirs? When SPID then raised millions, the outrage came to a head. It didn't matter that the funding was for the building and community work.
Mum says we won't be coming back.
You better edit me out.
Don't mention my past support.
We had events busted, trolls harass us, staff threatened for living out of borough. The chair of the Residents Association resigned from our board. The girl in our posters who would help find a hostel was vilified for not living on the estate. When our planning application went live, objections inundated the portal.
Art wash sicko.
Greedy thief. Imposter.
Posters went up all around the estate, claiming SPID was stealing Kensal's garden. At the height of the Grenfell inquiry, this nerve was red and raw.
There was nowhere to park. It had all been sold off. Our engines lost precious time.
Developers were in the spotlight. Locals saw our small extension as a land grab. Shrink the workshop space, extend the greenery. Though our architects obliged, the notice board showing our new plans was ripped down. We begged the council to put it back up.
All communications with residents will be through us.
RBKC bowed to the backlash. They refused planning permission, completely blocking every penny of investment. Our only option was this freezing appeal.
Regarding the garden, I note the plans were to change, but not reduce it, increasing green space overall.
To the opposition's disgust, the councillors voted in our favour. But watching the news that evening, I closed my eyes.
You okay, Mum?
As the BBC replayed the verdict, I felt shame. Kensington's awesome majesty and rare, incredible history were my first real breath of kinship. Its modernist walkways and glorious sports pitch are where I learned community. Winning this way felt like loss. After such a public humiliation, the campaign against us escalated.
Boo.
Snake.
Vulture.
Fake.
Camera phones were thrust in my face.
Helena Thompson is not a resident.
Got its own Facebook page. Across North Kensington, rage was spreading. In cramped hotels, survivors were told to move back to poisoned soil or face homelessness. As council cuts deepened, locals fought to prove how grateful they were. Residents' associations became bitter rivals. Mental health was the elephant in every toxic meeting room. I reached out to other community leaders.
If we work with you, they'll beat us up.
At night, I lay stiff and on edge. In the day, I wore headphones. I find myself with my head in my hands, unsure how long I'd been there. On a loop in my head, I saw the burning tower's heroine, turning a knife on herself. The council put out a statement.
It will not be granting landlords consent.
We have consulted on the estate and found the refurbishment is not wanted.
We have to be seen.
To listen to residents.
I told my staff we'd have to leave. Kensal would never be safe.
It was all for nothing.
SPID, where will you go?
Mum, SPID is you.
Let's be honest. I'm a middle-class playwright whose site-specific theatre advocates social housing. I was punished for trying to help the estate I fought for 16 years. Who wouldn't cast identity politics as the villain here? Me, for one. Without the luxury of a mortgage, I'd never have turned my £12 per hour job into enough money to restore Kensal's theatre, or enough time to write a single script.
You wrote that play for attention.
The burning tower turned the spotlight on neglect.
You're exploiting a crisis.
Until Grenfell, no one would fund Kensal.
You don't live here.
I'm not a resident. We're a charity that brings investment in.
How come SPID gets millions, but our flats rot?
You're right. That's wrong. Kensal residents knew who I was. We share a landlord. Together we'd scrubbed our mouldy walls for almost 2 decades. Together our children played while we emptied buckets of sewage water. The floods which poured through SPID's ceiling came from flats above and flats above those.
Helena Thompson is not a resident.
Always pronounce me right. Was RBKC getting my name wrong that should have rung alarm bells?
2.4 million. Our Royal Borough supports you, Helena.
The big theatrical appeal, the public pick aside, the closed door in-house U-turn, the line that residents don't want investment. The woman who called me her sister in that chilly town hall was desperately seeking accommodation. She mourned lost friends. It was mothers displaced by the fire, their children missing their classmates who stood up for SPID's free youth work. It was the Kensal resident with the worst flooded flat who spoke at our appeal. My good fortune did not start the fire. My friend's poverty did not start the fire. We should have remembered.
Mum, are you crying?
72 dead. It must be hundreds.
It's wrong to care more for cash than people.
Empty houses where people are homeless.
20 floors, all told to stay put.
The rich get richer
It's harder and harder for the poor.
The rates go up.
The flames spread faster.
Is it hot in here? Is the fridge overheating? Has there been another surge? Did you call the council? Where will the engines park? The smoke's getting bad now. It's bad, it's getting worse. Don't breathe it. Can't breathe. I can't breathe it. I can't. Grenfell had fires. Kensal had floods. We'd long campaigned with residents to make estates safe. It suited the council to pit us against each other. It suited the council to let SPID take their fall. The frustration we faced on the ground came from top-down neglect of facts above. Do I believe in listening to residents? With all my heart. Being seen to listen to residents? I believe in change. Change is not about appearances. Change is trying to understand each other. Change is learning from difference. Without conflict, there is no change. Without change, there is no story. So who was my nemesis? The sheep in wolf's clothing, the puppet master pulling the strings. Having been framed in this role myself, I wouldn't force it on anyone. No one set out to other me. No one ordered Kensal's demise. RBKC is not a person. It's a corporation.
Is Trump a brand?
Who will Brexit help?
Mum, what's the pollen?
Scapegoating others is not new, but it is increasingly commercial.
Mum, will everyone blame us when we're men?
I tell my children, two lucky, anxious boys, there's room for us all in the struggle. It's how we use any advantage that earns our place.
Mum, what is evil?
Mum, is it allowed to make money out of pain?
Profit now means persecution. Managed decline is applied to us all. Lucrative hate is fueling despair. Fighting each other helps algorithms, not people. When a group called Residents for Refurb asked for SPID support, we had nothing to lose. Our Kensal members joined locals who also loved the theatre. Together they circulated the actual plans. Together they proved the estate backed them. Together they called for an independent consultation. RBKC started to panic. After months of looking away, I met my old friend's eyes and saw courage. Just before lockdown, those who opposed the refurbishment met with those in favour. They agreed a last-minute compromise.
Swap the extension for a lift.
My heart sank. Access is the council's duty. RBKC had always refused to pay. They claimed a listed building could not be adapted. They claimed that access needs had been met.
Sending sick people through the car park.
Those stairs are a liability.
A lift will help everyone.
A safe home is a human right.
Not only would the lift improve life for visitors and residents, it would unite. The funders agreed to cover the cost. The council granted permission. It was disabled residents, residents of colour, single parent residents, teenage residents who dared to make our case. It was those who'd experienced enough injustice who refused to keep falling for it. North Kensington's bravest proved that money matters less than allies. It's their voices you hear with me today.
So what if she doesn't live here?
She's done the theatre since I was little.
She's making the council do their job.
Helena stands with us.
Only by standing together could SPID and the residents make RBKC do right by Kensal. As all permissions were finally granted, we asked what our royal boroughs played deaf to for decades.
How long until all of Kensal's fixed?
Our 12 public funders pricked up their ears. They attached an unprecedented condition. During SPID's refurbishment, RBKC must pay to fix all of Kensal's leaks and hazards. The cost to the council who once banned investment will be significant. This is Kensal House Community Rooms Theatre, designed to be part of an urban village. In 1937, socialist ambient architect Fry's righteous vision became a reality. Next year, these beautiful windows will be reinstated, replacing the cheap glass blocks the council put in their place. When I first fell for Kensal, my children had not been born. Now they're teenagers.
How does it feel, Mum?
The passion in my belly, the strength in my chest, the relief I breathe. It feels like hope. In standing up for estates, SPID stands for residents and outsiders. In standing up for estates, SPID stands for history and for home. In standing up for estates, SPID stands for humanity on fire. The burning tower is all our stories. It's not over. Is there a moral?
Crisis leads change.
You're not alone.
Our audience is the future.
If they say stay, we should go.
Precious things have a way of going unnoticed. That's as true of listed estates as it is of our sanity, our young people, and our planet. I hadn't known I had good mental health until I almost lost it, along with the building I've loved for 16 years. The Greeks had a word for the fire that burns and burns, the furies. For the utterly disempowered, this kind of anger is the closest thing to agency. Only by speaking for each other can we stop the flames feeding themselves and escape the rage and the sorrow, the scars and the tears, the fires and the floods of divide and rule. Join me and us at spidtheatre.com.